They didn't know who they were taking. To them, he was just another American, another bargaining chip. But in the world of shadows, he was something else entirely. He was a member of one of the most elite, secretive, and dangerous units the United States has ever fielded. And when you take someone like that, you don't just declare war on a country, you declare war on a community of men who have built their lives on the art of finding people like you and ending them. It began on a dusty road outside a nondescript town in eastern Syria. The sun was dropping low, casting long shadows over broken concrete and rusted rebar. The convoy wasn't military, not exactly. 2 Hilux pickups, 1 beat-up van, and a driver who thought the trip would be routine. Inside, among the few passengers, sat a man wearing local clothes, speaking fluent Arabic, blending in with the others. His name wasn't on any official manifest. His real mission was buried behind layers of compartmentalized intelligence. He was a Delta Force operator, Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, and his cover was airtight. But airtight doesn't mean invulnerable. The ambush was sudden. A blast, an IED hidden beneath loose asphalt, tore through the road ahead. The driver swerved, but gunfire erupted from 2 rooftops. Masked men moved in fast, firing short, controlled bursts. Civilians scattered. Within 90 seconds, it was over. The van door was ripped open. 2 men were dragged out. One was shouting in panic. The other said nothing. His eyes locked on the man in front of him, memorizing his face. That silence was the first mistake his captors would make. Delta Force is not like the regular military. It's not even like the Navy SEALs, the Rangers, or the Green Berets. It exists in a classified corner of US. Special Operations Command, born from the chaos of the 1970s, when terrorism was exploding across Europe and the Middle East. Its men, officially operators, are trained for hostage rescues, covert raids, and surgical strikes in places most Americans have never heard of. Their identities are classified, their missions unacknowledged. A Delta operator isn't just a soldier. He's a weapon sharpened through years of grueling selection, language training, and real-world missions where hesitation means death. And the man who had just been taken was more than capable of surviving captivity, but his captors had no idea what kind of storm they'd just set in motion. In 2017, Syria was a chessboard covered in blood. The Syrian civil war was already 6 years old. The Assad regime was holding onto power with Russian and Iranian backing. ISIS had been pushed into its last strongholds, but still had loyalists scattered across the region. The United States had boots on the ground, special operations forces working with Kurdish fighters, gathering intelligence, and targeting high-value terror networks. This environment was chaos for civilians, but a perfect hunting ground for kidnappers. Hostage-taking wasn't random, it was an economy. Militias sold captives to bigger groups. Terror cells traded them for weapons. And every so often, someone would be taken for propaganda. The kidnappers thought they had an American aid worker, maybe an undercover intelligence officer. They imagined ransom money, prisoner swaps, or a video on the internet designed to humiliate Washington. What they didn't understand was that this kidnapping would bypass the normal diplomatic channels. No slow negotiations, no secret backroom deals. Instead, a green light would be given to a unit that doesn't send messages, it sends operators. When the ambush report hit the US intelligence network, it moved fast. Analysts saw the details, location, time, the fact that one of the victims wasn't accounted for. But then, the encrypted message that changed everything, possible loss of high-value SOF asset. In less than an hour, a secure phone was ringing in a basement office in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, home of 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. The voice on the other end didn't ask for details. He just said, "Task Force Green is moving." Inside the unit's operations center, a map of Syria lit up. They weren't looking at it like diplomats or politicians. They were looking at it like hunters. Where was he taken? Who had the capability to move him? What routes could they use? Who owed them favors? Every piece of human intelligence, every drone feed, every intercepted phone, call it all, started getting funneled into one purpose: find him before they move him again. The operator was moved at night, his head covered, wrist bound. He didn't resist. Resistance here only gets you killed early. He focused instead on sensory details: the smell of diesel, the sound of loose gravel under the tires, the way the vehicle tilted on corners. This was training in action. Delta operators prepare for captivity. They learn how to keep track of time without a watch, how to communicate with other prisoners without speaking, how to stay alive without appearing defiant. They also learn something else: patience. In his mind, he wasn't thinking if they would come for him. He was thinking how fast, and when they came, how many of his captors would be alive afterward. In northern Iraq, an MQ-9 Reaper Drive 1 pivoted in the sky, its camera locked on a dirt road where 2 trucks had been spotted leaving the ambush site. A CIA field officer was on the radio with a Kurdish Peshmerga commander promising weapons in exchange for roadblocks. Back at Fort Bragg, Delta's operators were already packing gear. There was no time for rehearsals, no time for weeks of intelligence build-up. Every hour, the target was in motion, increased the risk of him being moved deeper into hostile territory. Weapons were selected for close quarters, fighting short-barrel carbines, suppressed pistols and breaching shotguns. Night vision goggles were checked, extra medical kits were packed. The mission profile wasn't official yet, but everyone knew how this was going to end. The kidnappers took their prize to a safe house, a 2-story building in a small village near the Euphrates River. Locals knew better than to ask questions. But there's one thing warlords and insurgents never account for: loyalty isn't free. Someone in that village owed the Americans a favor. A family member had been pulled from rubble during an airstrike. A cousin had been treated by a US military doctor. Someone made a phone call. And now the hunters had a location. The green light came at 2:17 hours. No ceremony, no speeches, just a single nod from the mission commander. The operators loaded into MH-60 Black Hawk helicopters under blackout conditions, rotors already screaming in the night. They weren't flying from a base in Syria, that would have been too predictable. Instead, the birds lifted off from a covert forward operating location in northern Iraq, racing low over the desert at speeds that made every grain of sand blur beneath them. Communications were minimal. Even inside the helicopters, the only words were short, clipped confirmations over secure headsets. In the dim red light of the cabin, faces were hidden behind night vision goggles, every man locked into the mental zone where there's no tomorrow, only the next 30 minutes. On one side, the mission commander studied a live drone feed piped directly into his screen. The building was there, thermal signatures inside, too many to tell who was who yet. But they knew one thing: they were close. The village was asleep when the helicopters arrived, or so it seemed. In truth, the sound of rotor blades over the Euphrates was enough to jolt anyone awake. But these were stealth-modified birds, dampening noise and minimizing radar profile. At 400 meters out, the MH-60 second flared, coming to a hover over an open patch of hard ground. Fast ropes dropped, and the first operator slid down, boots hitting dirt in seconds. Delta Force doesn't waste time on sprawling perimeters, they go straight for the throat. The assault element moved in a wedge formation, suppressors ready, night vision turning the world into a glowing green dreamscape. Overhead, an AC-130 gunship orbited invisible to the villagers, but ready to vaporize any armed vehicle that tried to leave the area. The safe house came into view, 2 stories, cinder block walls, iron door. 2 armed sentries at the entrance, relaxed but alert. The first shot broke the quiet, a suppressed round that dropped the closer guard instantly. The second guard barely had time to shout before another round took him down. A breacher ran forward, a small cylinder in hand. He slammed it against the iron door. A flash of light, a deafening crack, and the lock was gone. The point man moved first, clearing the doorway in a fluid motion, weapon scanning. Inside was chaos, shouting in Arabic, footsteps on the stairs, the clatter of someone grabbing a rifle. Upstairs, the captive heard it, the low thump of suppressed gunfire, the sharp metallic slam of a door being blown. He knew instantly they were here. He shifted his weight, ready for the split second when he'd need to move. His hands were tied, but that didn't matter. In Delta Force, you train for everything, including being rescued in the middle of a gunfight. The door to his room burst open. For a fraction of a second, the beam from a weapon-mounted light hit his eyes. Then the light dipped slightly, and he heard the most welcome sound in the world. "Flash, you good?" The call sign. The confirmation. He nodded once. Hands were on him immediately, cutting restraints, checking for injuries. Another operator shoved a suppressed HK-416 into his hands. He might have been a prisoner 30 seconds ago, but now he was part of the fight again. The moment the captive was free, the assault team began exfil. Downstairs, another element was engaged in a brief firefight with 2 armed men who had burst in from the rear entrance. Suppressed fire stitched through the darkness, precise, and surgical. The team moved fast, using smoke to obscure sightlines from surrounding buildings. Outside, a blocking element covered the street, the night vision optics scanning for any approaching threats. Overhead, the AC-130 relayed that 2 trucks were moving toward the village from the east. Without hesitation, the mission commander gave the order. 30mm cannon fire rained down in a controlled burst, turning the trucks into twisted metal before they could get within 500 meters. By the time the helicopters lifted off, the entire engagement had lasted less than 7 minutes. The village had barely begun to process what had happened, and the hunters were already gone. Back at the forward location, the rescued operator walked into the debriefing room still in his dusty clothes. He didn't need medical attention, not beyond a few bruises. His eyes were sharp, his posture relaxed, like nothing unusual had happened. But for the men who had just brought him home, it was another reminder of the unspoken truth in their world. You never leave one of your own behind.